We're excited to have as our guest this week, Jeff Kolez, who is the founder of Divorce Daddy, which is a group that offers special support to dads who are going through divorce, which leads us to our topic today, which is, do dads need special support through divorce? Welcome to our show, Jeff. We're really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about Divorce Daddy? How did it start? Why did it start? And how do people benefit from Divorce Daddy?
I went through pretty miserable divorce starting about 12, 13 years ago. And it was just such a terrible experience, and it occupied too much of my life for the better part of a decade. And I just remember going through it and just feeling like this is insanity. Like it was such an uncomfortable, terrible experience to go through. So about 2 years ago, it was time for a career change. I was in tech for 25 years and my tech life was coming to an end. So I started looking for something else, and somebody suggested, look at what your deepest wound is, and that's where you can help out. So I immediately thought of divorce, and the idea is,
I think you had this deep wound that you were carrying for over 10 years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And did it actually ebb and flow in that period of 12 years, or did it more or less stay the same in terms of its level of hurt?
No, I think it gradually got better. I would think of it like healing, like improving like that. Maybe a bit of ebb and flow. I found a new partner. We've been together for the majority of that time. And a relationship is such a mirror of who you are and your worldview. And I knew that I wanted to get better myself so that I could have a deep relationship again. And
you were really in a process of pain and healing for a better part of 12 years when you came into Divorce Daddy.
Yep.
Okay. And what is Divorce Daddy?
It's the idea is to give men that feeling of I've got it, that confidence that comes from within, that feeling of safety, and that feeling of calmness.
And how do you deliver that to the people that come to you?
We do it by inner work. So dissolving emotions, setting out new paths in life. That's a lot of what I did through my healing journey.
I see. And is this delivered through one-on-one? Is it in the group setting? Is it online? Is it live? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It's one-on-one. I work in 6-month segments because shorter segments, how do you change a life in a shorter segment? So 6 months, and we'll have calls every 2 weeks, and you'll have ongoing support as between sessions. And we set out where you're going to go, where you think you're going to go at the beginning session, and then we start making progress. And you're going to encounter resistance as you go along, but the idea is to listen to what that resistance is telling you, because there's gold inside of that resistance. The resistance, and what I mean by resistance is you try to do something and you'll either get the opposite reaction, you'll feel terrible while doing it, or you won't want to do it. So inside of that is your path forward. So I help them look inside that and dissolve those emotions.
And would you be able to give us a profile of the client Like, what are we looking at here? I assume they're all men. They
Yep.
all were married or in a common law relationship. But give me more so as to visualize what is the state or the stage that they come to you at? Like, did they just break up last night? Are they 7 years into it? Give me a flavor for who you help.
I've been told that it's you 10 years ago, so me 10 years ago. So I'm looking at 6 months out of the divorce. And the reason for that is they are, the men at that stage are usually, they might be looking for a new relationship, and they might be dating around, and they notice that they're repeating the same patterns, and they don't want to be repeating those patterns, but they're starting to get that semblance of or that sense that they're repeating what led them to their divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think that men have different support needs through divorce? Because I know I've seen a lot of coaches and programs out there for people that specifically work with women, and I haven't noticed as much for men. And I'm just wondering if you think they have different needs or requirements than women do when they're going through divorce.
I don't know that there is a lot. I think of divorce as a very emotional battleground. And what it seems like from my experience is suddenly your partner, your best friend, is your biggest enemy. And that person knows all of the buttons to push on you. And that I'm sure you've seen it a million times where they're just pushing those buttons over and over again and getting that result, getting that negative reaction. So the support for men, I would suggest, is learning to turn those buttons off. I can give you one. Gray rocking is such a wonderful, simple technique where you just don't react to the other person.
Why is it called gray rocking?
It's called gray rocking because if you go to a beach with a million pebbles on the ground, you are no different from, you act like you're no different from a rock on the ground. What the person wants is your reaction. So if you don't give them that reaction, theory is eventually they'll get bored of you.
And do you know if that actually happens when your ex-spouse is pushing your buttons?
If what happens?
That by disregarding the button pushing, they eventually stop pushing buttons.
Worked for me.
Do you find it works for your clients?
Yeah, it's a pretty common technique to deal with high conflict situations, and it works very, very well.
Yeah, I know that's something that I find. I even tell clients at times is that if you change the way you react or you stop reacting to what your ex is doing, eventually they'll change their behavior because they'll get tired of, they're trying to get that reaction, trying to get it, they're not getting it. And so they'll stop, doing whatever it was they were doing. And that can be quite effective.
100%. Like I said, it worked really well for me. One of the first steps I suggest is getting emotional distance from your partner, from your ex-partner. Like, stop doing those things that you used to be doing. Don't, paint her living room or clean the gutters or anything like that. Get that space and stop doing those old things that you used to do.
Many years ago, I used to volunteer in the men's rights arena. And it's funny because back in the day, a lot of judges and lawyers looked very suspiciously of men who belonged to men's rights groups. Yet, simultaneously, there's far more services out there for women going through separation and divorce. But when the men organize themselves around it in a group effort, it's looked at suspiciously. Have you experienced any of that in your work?
Oh yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah. I have a friend who, and he might be a big name in your circles, or he's well known in certain circles, where he says any man who has a son, when he turns 18, he should take him to divorce court or like family court and let him sit there for the day
Hmm.
and see what goes on there. Um,
Very good advice. You know, it's funny. In all of the roles that people have in preparing people for marriage, nobody ever thinks to take those people and spend a day on a field trip in divorce court.
Maybe
is
it should
good
become a
advice.
mandatory training. You can't get married unless you do it, both male and female.
Well, a relationship is marriage is the number one most important choice you make in life. It can
Yeah,
make or break
absolutely.
your life. So, and in terms of, yeah, I hear you, Steve. What do I want to say here? The I think that when men stand up, that's when changes get made. So I almost feel like they're keeping men off balance, and they get their feet kicked out when they go through a divorce, and I think that's on purpose.
Well, I do think it's interesting in 2025, I think it can be hard to be, I often say, I think it can be hard to be a man nowadays. And I have a son, so I'm always empathetic to both males and females. But, sometimes as a man, if you're too sensitive and caring and expressive of your emotions, you can be criticized for that. But then if you're more stoic and you hold it all in and you're outwardly tough, then you're considered cold and aloof and you're criticized for that. So in some ways, that way men can't win whichever
You're
way.
damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
I agree to an extent, but I think the solution is, yeah, don't be in your head, don't be in your emotions. If you're in your head, you don't have a good relationship. And that's how I used to be, because I was in tech for 25 years and everything was black and white and cut and dry, and I was very logical about everything. But that's a really cold place to live from. And if you're in your emotions, like, you get blown every which way. There's the place in that center, and that's the impetus behind the work I'm doing, is guiding men into their hearts. And that may sound woo woo, but it's worked really well for me. It's this warm center where you feel strong, you feel connected, um, and you're able to have good relationships, and just be very present.
It almost sounds like, you have used your own journey and your pain, and looking inwardly, you've developed a plan to help men not go through what you went through and make them maybe travel a shorter distance than the distance that you traveled, um, and maybe come out the other side with a fresh look on life. And have you seen any success stories after you've walked them through this tunnel?
Yeah. One guy was very, very angry. Um, I don't want to talk too much about it, but he was a very, very angry guy. But he's able to, reconnect with his heart and have a good relationship with a new partner now. Um, and that it kind of trickles down to every part of your, every aspect of life. It impacts his job, it impacts his career, it impacts, how much money he brings. So yeah, if you're angry all the time, If you're angry at your ex all the time, you're not going to do very well in life.
For sure. Now, do you work with men individually, or is it all group coaching, or how does it work?
No, individually.
And you're based out of, you're in Canada?
Well, I'm Canadian, but we're slow traveling through Mexico right now.
Slow traveling?
Slow traveling. We started in Playa del Carmen. We're in Ensenada, Mexico right now.
Very nice. Well, I guess that's the one advantage of the virtual world, right? You can have clients from all over.
Yeah, exactly.
So would you call what you do coaching, therapy, soundboarding? What is it? Is there even a name for what it is that you do categorically?
I think of it as coaching because I'm helping to guide men into their hearts. So, and I don't think that's something that many people know about or know what it is. So that's the uphill battle is kind of teaching people what that is. But yeah, it's coaching them into this new aspect of their life. It's learning that emotions are guides and not strict truth. And if you can look at it as that, then if you can look at it as a guide, then when somebody pushes your buttons, you just go, oh, thanks for highlighting that for me. Thanks for letting me know about that. And then you can, you bring it to the next session and we work on it. And then hopefully it doesn't bother you again.
So let me ask you this. Is Jeff Kolez today the same Jeff Kolez from 12 years ago?
Absolutely.
In terms of him as a partner, or is he a different guy?
Completely different guy. And I wish I had thought of it, but I would have sent you a picture of old Jeff. He was very, like I said, very logical. And like I said, that's very cold. It's very, but when you're very logical, you're also, it's paradoxical. You're logical, but you don't know how to handle emotions. So you still get blown around by emotions. This today, I think this Jeff is a lot stronger, is a lot more calm, more centered. Yeah, I'm a completely different person. I think my journey of improving through the divorce, I don't, sorry, let me restart that. I don't think, I think I had already started improving as I was going through the divorce before I even started the divorce. And I think my divorce happened because of this improvement, because of this growth. And that's okay. What's going to happen is going to happen. My ex didn't want to join me on this journey, so that's okay. But luckily I found somebody who did, and we've been together since.
What advice do you have for us as family lawyers on how we can better support our male clients?
I think there's, when I went through my divorce, I think there was no mention of emotions and how to handle them. And I think, I can understand why. But I think that's a really important aspect that's missed. I would have liked to have known what I was getting into. It just felt like I was in this maze, and I had no idea when the end was going to happen. My ex did something. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, the silver bullet. And no. It's apparently a very common tactic where they accuse you, the female ex-partner accuses the man of abuse, and that abuse can be any type. And then the courts just kind of look at, and they see abuse, and then they go, everything seems to get sided with the woman. So that's what I dealt with. And nobody seemed to want to believe my side of the story. So having some support in that aspect would have been helpful, like explaining that that's what was going on.
That makes sense. I think in family law, sometimes, unfortunately, there are false allegations. There's also true allegations, of course, as well. They're not. There's two sides to it, but it's always very unfortunate when somebody makes up a false allegation. And I know of people who've had that happen as well. And I think that there should be consequences for people who do that, and there really aren't, which is maybe a bit of a hole in the system at times.
Agreed. I'm not talking about true allegations.
No.
Of course, that shouldn't, that should be taken seriously, but so should false allegations. It didn't feel like anybody took my comments seriously. And then as I got into looking into this industry, the statistic that really caught my eye is that men have a suicide rate after divorce of 8 to 10 times, and the numbers are a little fuzzy, 8 to 10 times of that of women.
Wow.
And that's shocking to me. So to me, that's a crisis. And what are we doing about it? Nobody seems to.
Well, you say, what are we doing about it? But, smarter people than the three of us have written books about how men and women are different and how they process feelings and events differently. And, Jeff, you talk about your evolution as a human being. Fact of the matter is, even in the present day society where we have discussions about one's chosen presentation of their of their gender or their identity, we still are born and for many years living as one gender. And men, in my experience as a divorce lawyer for 30 years, but also personally with my friends who are men don't really talk about emotions as well as women do. In fact, men sort of shy away from those conversations. And you told us that, you were a very linear, logical, rational thinker. And maybe that just doesn't work well in relationships. And I'm not saying you personally, I'm saying, men in general. When I think about what causes relationships to fail, we keep coming up against this word called communication problems. And in your work as the owner of Divorce Daddy and the work that you do with your clients, is there a lot of emphasis on how to better communicate, which is not customary for men?
I think it's our turn to evolve, and we've got to evolve that. I think relationships are changing. That's why this divorce rate is so high as it is.
So, going back to your point about the suicide rate being higher with men, can we hypothesize that if men confronted their feelings more openly and liberally, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have such anger and hate inside of them?
You're only going to push down your emotions so far until they explode.
Mm-hmm.
How many men have, a hole punched in their drywall from anger? So,
and what do you do with that?
You redirect it. That's the first step. You learn to listen to what it's telling you, and then you learn to let it go. I have three rituals that I suggest if you're starting out. If you are that guy who's punching the drywall. And these are such basic things, but I bet you 99% of people don't do them. But very, very basic. Go outside every day. Go outside, get some sun, breathe the fresh air. It's impossible to be in a bad mood after that. Just go get some sunshine, get some fresh air, go move.
It's easy for you to say. You're in Mexico.
Yeah, we're in Toronto. It's cold here.
Go move. Go do some martial arts. Go for a walk. I don't care what it is. Number 3, some sort of presence practice. I like meditation, something that gets you into the present moment. I also do boxing. It's impossible to be worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow if some guy is trying to punch you in the head. If you do those 3 things, your life is going to be different in 3 to 6 months, because you're going to start to take notice of what's happening inside. That's the place I'm guiding you into inside. What's that saying? The longest journey a man will ever have is from his head to his heart. That's where we're going here.
Good advice.
Yeah, fantastic advice.
You know, there's a TV show called Shrinking, and it's a spoof on a therapist who has serious problems himself, but he's a therapist. And in one scene, he's dealing with a guy, which is more or less who you're helping, Jeff. And the guy is filled with anger. And this therapist, who, by the way, is extremely unconventional, his solution is he goes with a guy, he says, come with me. And he takes this guy to a Muay Thai studio and signs him up, puts him in the ring, and fights some other fighter to get his anger out. And that's when the therapy starts.
When I was at the worst of it, I wasn't doing boxing yet. I was playing squash, and I would picture my ex's face on the squash ball and just hammer the ball as hard as I could, whatever it is.
Probably did better in that game.
Well, that tactic in squash is not the best, but sure.
Yeah. Well, listen, the truth of the matter is we deal with a lot of clients, men and women, who are so badly hurt by their partner, ex-partner, that they want to reciprocate that pain on them. And some people, sadly, will do it with their hands. And some people will do it with the instrument called law, which, sometimes hire lawyers who will use lawyers to clobber their ex, which takes us to the comment that you made earlier about false allegations of domestic violence. And so this is, sadly, a very common routine that Leanne and I see quite a bit. And, back to Leanne's question to you about how do we help men better? And you've been very helpful in sharing and being, quite frankly, open and authentic about your own journey and how you're using your pain and suffering to help men lessen the load of their own journey and pain and suffering through this process. So listen, on behalf of Leanne and I and Divorce Explained, I want to say thank you for not only being with us today, but thank you for offering yourself as an instrument who had gone through so much pain yourself to lessen the pain of other people who are where you were 12 years ago.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And I think there's a real opportunity to change how our society is if we can learn from painful moments like divorce.
And if someone who's listening to this would like to work with you or learn more about your program, how can they best find you?
divorce-daddy.com. All my links, and I have on the front page, I have a link to a starter kit, which talks about how to get started with, on that journey of going from your head to your heart.
Well, thank you.
I love that visual from the head to the heart. That's going to stay with me, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Divorce Explained.